State John Hay, Secretary of War Elihu Root, and the man the President would name as the first head of the U.S. Forest Service, Gifford Pinchot. TR liked to have an interesting mix around the table, and he would lead his lunch guests in discussing history, literature, politics, and science. TR particularly valued the company of naturalists such as John Burroughs, who came in 1907 and walked the property with the President listening to bird songs. George Bird Grinnell, who edited 3 books with TR on North American big game, worked with Roosevelt at Sagamore Hill to found the Boone and Crockett Club for hunters committed to conservation. In one afternoon, I have heard him speak to the foremost Bible student of the world, a prominent ornithologist, a diplomat, and a French general, all of whom agreed that Father knew more about the subjects on which they had specialized than they did. Archie marveled. What a guy. On July 27, 1904, the guests were Republican notables who came to formally notify Roosevelt that he had been nominated to run for the office he assumed upon McKinley's assassination. TR waited under the porta croce in a frock coat and white waistcoat for the committee chaired by Speaker of the House Joseph G. Cannon. The committee, family members, friends and staff, totaling about 150, gathered on the piazza to hear Cannon's remarks. Then the group assembled on the lawn for photographers and refreshments served by the Roosevelt children and cousins. A few days later, after gaining the presidency via the electorate, TR wrote to 15-year-old Kermit at Groton about the overwhelming victory, the greatest popular majority and the greatest electoral majority ever given to a candidate for president. But he added that the really important thing was the lovely life I have here with Mother and with you children, and that compared to this home life, everything else was of very small importance from the standpoint of happiness. The increased and always unpredictable flow of guests, many unannounced, for meals or overnight stays, was a constant source of exasperation and stimulus for improvisation by the First Lady. Visitors often remarked about her unruffled nature, not realizing she kept her displeasure hidden, while she and cooperative servants scrambled. Fun fact. Edith once wrote to her sister that she was lucky to have such good-natured servants, because she never knew until the last minute whom TR would invite to lunch. I mean, breakfasts and dinners were usually limited to the family and close friends, but lunch times could be frantic. Some days, the kitchen staff would have to provide as many as 4 sittings at lunch to accommodate the children, the White House staffers, Mrs. Roosevelt, TR, and their guests, and the household servants. 4 sittings. That's incredible. Among the uninvited seeking an audience with the president was Captain Joshua Slocum, who had sailed his 40-foot sloop Spray solo around the world. Whoa. After meeting with TR, he took Archie for a week-long cruise. Another seafarer who dropped anchor in Oyster Bay was Robert E. Peary, on his way to the North Pole in a vessel he had named Roosevelt to inspire his crew. I believe in you, Peary, and I believe in your success. If it is within the possibility of a man, the president said in endorsing the enterprise. Continuing to shed some of her reticence, Edith welcomed most visitors, invited or otherwise, but she balked when the Russian ambassador, Count Cassini, sought an invitation for Grand Duke Boris, who had exhibited scandalous behavior in his trip across the country. Since the Duke was a cousin of Tsar Nicholas II, the president realized refusing to receive him would have political consequences. But the First Lady insisted that having him in the house would be an insult, and she would not abide having him at her dining room table. The ever-practical Edith resolved the issue by arranging a lunch invitation of her own down the hill at Yellowbanks with the president's Aunt Elizabeth, a.k.a. Lizzie, on the day of the Grand Duke's visit. To demonstrate that he had not lost touch with his neighbors, and probably to make amends for the disruptions caused by having a president in their midst, Roosevelt invited them all to Sagamore Hill at the end of his first summer as chief executive. The word went out through the newspapers and announcements at local churches. More than 8,000 people came to the flag-bedecked house. They snacked on ginger snaps and other refreshments while T.R., dressed in a frock coat, shook hands and declared that he was delighted to see them. One reporter estimated that Roosevelt was capable of shaking 60 hands per minute. After T.R. had spent 2 hours on the receiving line, a woman commented, "Mr. President, how tired you must be." "Not a bit," Roosevelt responded in his high-pitched aristocratic voice. "It takes more than a trolley car to knock me out, and more than a crowd to tire me." He then went on to shake hands for 2 more hours. Those who arrived early went home with souvenir punch glasses etched with Theodore Roosevelt, 1902. Ever since McKinley's assassination, Edith Roosevelt worried about her husband's safety. The Secret Service agents guarded the access road to the property patroled the perimeter. Guests invited by the president were cleared by the office in Oyster Bay and their names sent up to the Secret Service. The agents tried to keep unexpected and especially unbalanced visitors away. One day after Roosevelt arrived for his first summer as president, a defrocked priest with a grievance about a bishop showed up and was turned away. Roosevelt, who was playing tennis, remained unaware. Not all unwanted visitors were harmless. The following summer, a deranged farmer from Syosset, 5 miles to the south, appeared on the access road in a buggy with a revolver in his hand and told the Secret Service guard he had an appointment with the president to discuss his unemployed brother. Sent away, he returned 15 minutes later and claimed the president wanted him to marry Alice. Told to make an appointment the next day with the president's secretary in Oyster Bay, the man left but returned a quarter hour later. Again confronted by the Secret Service, the farmer saw the president open the door and urged his horse forward as a security guard dragged him to the ground. "I wanted to kill him," the farmer conceded later. I'm sure he did. Serving as leader of the nation meant less time at Sagamore Hill because Roosevelt could spend only a few weeks away from Washington at a time. But that meant he cherished his visits even more. We were, all of us, I am most ashamed to say, rather blue at getting back to the White House simply because we missed Sagamore Hill so much, T.R. wrote in the fall of 1905. Despite the attractions and distractions of Cove Neck, T.R. remained fully engaged in his presidential duties when at Sagamore Hill. With Russia and Japan engaged for more than a year in a war that Japan was winning, but both sides wanted to end, the combatants reached out to the president in April 1905 to mediate. He initially did not want to get involved in the convoluted situation. But by the time Roosevelt arrived in Oyster Bay 3 months later to start his summer vacation, arrangements had been made for a peace conference at Portsmouth, New Hampshire. The Russian envoys were Sergei Witte, president of the Council of Ministers, and Baron Rosen, ambassador to the United States. The Japanese representatives were Minister of Foreign Affairs Baron Komura and the Minister to the United States Kogoro Takahira. Baron Kentaro Kaneko, who had attended Harvard at the same time as T.R. but had not met the future president then, was a third envoy with no official role in the negotiations. T.R. liked the intelligent Kaneko and invited him to Sagamore Hill, where they walked and swam and had dinner with Edith and 7-year-old Quentin. The boy was sent to bed after dinner while the adults remained in the library talking. At 9:30 p.m., the First Lady folded her knitting and said, "I am going to bed, and I don't expect you to follow until you have straightened out the affairs of the world." She provided 2 candles and a box of matches and said, "Light yourselves to bed, gentlemen, and good night." T.R. and his guests talked for another hour and a half before the president locked the windows, blew out the lamp, and put the dog out. The men headed upstairs to sleep. though not before the president gave his guests extra blankets. Woody came to Sagamore Hill a month later with a letter from the Tsar and told the president that the Russians were willing to negotiate based on the Japanese victories to date, but not concede that they might lose more territories if the fighting continued. The Japanese wanted payment of an indemnity, which the Russians would not accept. The president pointed out that the Russian position was weak and the country might have to pay the Japanese to end the war. Be right back. Sorry.